Let's go. Today, we got yet another back and tricep workout. You already know the drill. We're starting on a little bit of those single arm push downs. Hope everyone's week has been doing good. Training's been extra good for me this past week. Been improving across the board, which has been super nice. But got a lot of flack. I got a lot of flack on a video talking about Carter extensions. I made a clip of the last video about Carter extensions and how I thought they were useless, because they are, right? And I thought that was funny. How people are just so mentally illiterate that they can't even watch the video that I explained the physics behind why I thought the exercise was useless. So, I don't know, maybe one of these days I'll do a full in-depth, kinesiology style video behind the concept of stability and anchoring on certain exercises. But yeah, no, it's been good, because again, it's the whole reason why I'm doing this on a lat pull down, is so I get to anchor in my whole body so I'm more stable, get a little more extra force output there. Whew. Oh geez, let's take a look. On my I'm in a first aid class right now, and my professor is very like a gym teacher-esque, kind of. Like he's very like a football coach, right? He's pretty jacked, I can't lie. But he has very old school principles, so he's telling me about all these 80% of your 1 rep max, and doing 5x5s. And I was like, so I'm obviously talking to him about, my personal philosophies behind training, like frequency and volume and intensity, and all these things. And we're just going back and forth. And then we're talking about the gym that I go to, this one. And he was like, you drive 20 minutes away to go to some gym? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I wouldn't do that, blah, blah, blah. And there's this other guy who sits next to me. He's huge. So we're all, we're just chopping it up and whatnot. And they were both there yeah, he preaches this gym and blah, blah, blah. So it just got me thinking. I was like, well, this is a pretty great gym. So I just started thinking about what are the best gyms that I've been to? And it just got me thinking, I've been to probably the best gyms in Texas, so I feel like I'm relatively qualified for this topic. And yeah, we'll do a quick little top 5. I think coming in 5 is probably the worst best gym I've been to. Right? It was Alphaland. Went to Alphaland not too long ago, a couple months ago, and was thoroughly disappointed. Obviously, it's a great gym, but I was kind of expecting a little more, especially compared to the other gyms that I've been to. I went to number 4, Los Campeon in Austin. That's a great gym. If you're in Austin, you need to go to Los Camp. It's such an elite gym, Panada machines everywhere, great posing room. Everyone there's massive. Honestly, ideal gym. I love that gym. Been there a couple times. And then coming in at 3, I'm gonna put Destination Dallas. Destination Dallas. The next 3 are all in Dallas. Destination, it's got that grunge aesthetic. All massive guys. Home of Gasp. You already know. We got the full Gasp fit. It's just how it is. Right? Not gonna dwell on that too much. And then the top 2, I'm kind of cheating here, but it's going to be both absolute recomps I've been to. Those gyms are insane. All Panada, the aesthetic's insane, lighting's insane. It's like if you took a Rolls Royce and you made it into a gym, and that is absolute recomp. The owner is a massive chiller too. Nabil, love that guy. Met him once, super chill. Anyways, that'll be my quick little top 5 gyms. There we go. It's gonna be the last warm-up set. Kind of yapped a little bit too much there, but. Oh, geez, but my back and tricep workouts have been rather elite, you know? We've been progressing each lift, and hopefully I can keep up that trend. Oh, but it's another thing with being I'm a kinesiology major, and so taking a lot of kinesiology classes and talking to these like these professors, you know, they're not super into like the bodybuilding side of things, like hypertrophy, you know, and so me having that be my, you know, AOS, like my area of specialty, whatever. It takes a certain level of restraint to not like pipe up when talking about bodybuilding. Like the other day, last week, he's talking about what is a sport and blah, blah, blah. And this other guy, he's like, well, is bodybuilding a sport? And he's like, I don't think so. I think bodybuilding's a pageant. And I just sat there and I took it like a good boy, you know, which I just don't think is true, right? Especially to people who don't know bodybuilding. I'll touch on that in a second. Let's get this first set in. We're shooting for 5 reps here. Come on. Were the reps messy? Yeah. Did we get 5 reps though? We did. That's all that matters. So, but anyways, back to what I was saying. I just can't help but disagree when people say that bodybuilding is not a sport. Especially when they don't realize, first off, the process of bodybuilding is most certainly a sport, right? Weightlifting, right? And secondly, stepping on stage is exhausting, right? I've never stepped on stage, but went through a posing routine after the last video we filmed with a posing coach, right? And he's, tweaking all my stuff, and, there's a difference between posing for like aesthetics and doing bodybuilding poses, right? It's completely different, right? It is the most exhausting thing ever. I mean, having to flex everything perfectly, like your quads, your glutes, got to tilt your hips back and make sure you're flaring properly, and you got to get the shoulder position right, and it's exhausting. And I don't think people realize that the posing is a skill in itself. You got to do like vacuums, and obviously you got to have the muscle and conditioning. So I just think it's a little bit naive to say that bodybuilding is not a sport, right? It might not be a sport in the same way that, basketball is a sport or football, but, there's things like gymnastics and ice skating that are considered sports. And I would argue that bodybuilding fits into a similar category. So, That's just me though. Let's take a shot at this this other arm. Come on, shooting for 5. Leg is a 5. Oh, geez, that is freaking heavy. That is so brutal. I mean, I don't think people realize the difference in weight from one of these cables to these, right? You got the single pulley compared to the double. I mean, it's quite literally twice the weight. Whew. Jeez, that is brutal. Well, let's get a quick login. Yeah, I also think another thing that's just like widely slept on is this. You know, in the last video I talked about why I think TNF's cuff straps are useless. Not useless per se, but rather there's no point in getting them because you can accomplish everything, if not better, with a figure 8, right? And not to be too science bro-esque, but when taking a look at something like a cuff, right? Cuff supports the forearm, okay? And it doesn't really support your wrist exactly. It's on your wrist, right? And so, in something like a push down, you know, I'm just gonna take it out real quick. Something like a push down, it's gonna be like this, right? And so, with the weight going up like this, and your arm being at an angle like this, can get maybe uncomfortable, especially with, you know, no wrist stabilization, right? Which is how a traditional cuff works, right? But when you get to stagnate it in the figure 8 and you have it like this, right? At the very top, right? It's gonna be pulling on that wrist, right? And so, you know, whereas as soon as you get down here, right, it's going to create a slightly longer moment arm of resistance because it's going to start pulling on this strap as opposed to on the wrist. So it's going to create a longer moment arm, therefore giving you a better resistance profile. It's going to be more even throughout the whole movement. I also like it because it's just more comfortable. It gives you something to grip. You know, you get both lines of stability on both the forearm and the wrist. I think it's kind of a no-brainer, and never seen anybody do this. And I've been doing this for like 3 years. So, you know, just gotta train smarter and harder. There we go. Oh, there we freaking go. You know what else I was thinking about is, since, you know, really dialing in on my diet these past couple months, right? You know, my Crohn's disease inflammation has gone significantly downhill. And it just had me thinking, like, the vast majority of diseases, including both, you know, chronic and not chronic, feel like could definitely be solved by an effective diet, right? Especially things like diabetes and obesity and other autoimmune disorders. If you really just clean up the diet, that just influences every other aspect of your life. It'll influence your sleep, your inflammation levels, brain function. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. And it's a little sad to see that people kind of choose to stay being unhealthy, you know, and they get that victim mentality, right? You know, fat people, how fat people feel, blaming them being obese on their genetics, you know. It's like, bro, just put the fork down. Like, you're not fat. You know, your genetics aren't causing you to eat 40,000 calories over your maintenance, okay? And there we go. Moving on to some pull-ups, baby. Last back day, we got a 45 for 8. So I think we're gonna be going up to a crisp 55 and seeing what we can do there. Let's get a quick little warm up. Feeling good. Let's snag this. This is the issue with weighted pull-ups, is the incremental jumps. It's like, you know, I'm not gonna jump straight to a 45, right? But it's like warming up with a 35 means that I gotta put this on, take it off, put a 45 on, and then put another 10 on after that. So then it's just like, it's kind of a pain. It's all right though. Feels pretty good. You know, I reckon I might just throw 2 10s on, call it a day. Something I was thinking about the other day is, would you rather have big lats or big arms, right? Now, I would argue, since me being on the side of big lats, right? You know, that's just like I have kind of small arms, pretty big back for my size, I'd say. You know, I definitely love having big lats, right? Helps with the V-taper and whatnot, and it just like adds that oomph, you know? But also, that's only in the gym, right? People, you know, you're not walking around with huge lats just sticking out, right? The most you'll get is like your back showing through like a thin t-shirt, right? But with big arms, if you got big arms, everybody knows you have big arms, right? People don't know, you know, what kind of wings I'm hiding under a shirt. But if you got big arms, it's like, damn, look at those guys' arms, right? And there's just a certain level of aesthetics that comes with having cannon arms. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that I wasn't a little envious of people with big arms. But at the end of the day, I think I still take big lats, although it is close, you know. Just wish I was one of those people who have it all, you know. Some people just have huge back and arms, and you know, it's like, damn, it's pretty aesthetic. think as I get more into bodybuilding, the less appealing an overdeveloped chest is, right? Like everybody loves having some yids on them. But I just think out of all of them, I think I'd just rather have like big shoulders, big back, big arms, right? Things like that, to me, would be more appealing than a big chest. But, you know, that's the beauty of it. Everybody's got their own genetics to work with. So, you know, it's fun to see how people interact. This is extremely uncomfortable, but that's okay. We only have to do it for one set. I actually don't know how much I'm gonna get this for, but you know, we're gonna see. Hopefully, you know, 5 or 6 at least, but we'll see. What was that, 5? I think that was 5. This is cramping up my thighs. Ugh. All right. You know, this is another thing about bodybuilding is it's so simple, yet, you know, so difficult for some people, right? I'm only doing 2 sets. I'm doing 8 sets of back a week, right? Which is just like extremely doable, right? 8 sets? You can't give me 8 sets? But, you know, some people just have a hard time adhering to a program. So it's like, it's so simple, you know, all you gotta do is do 8 sets a week to failure and, you know, eat and sleep, which 2 of those things you should already be doing right. So, you know, I guess it's not for everybody, but you know what I think we need to do? I think we need a cameo of my dad, you know, the Arab animal, right? Because again, he's just like, I think that'd be super entertaining because he's just so freakishly strong and big. I don't know, I just think it'd be entertaining, right? Watching my dad, you know, just absolutely mog the hell out of me. But, you know, I think it's interesting. You know, he's a bit of a fob, not super fob, you know, but he was born overseas, and so I kind of wish he taught me some Arabic, right? A little more than what I know. I know, like, you know, hardly conversational, if that, right? But it feels like I'm missing out, right? When I see other Arabs, right? It's like, damn, I'm whitewashed, right? Like, I can't help but watch those Arab skits, right? You know, the Arab dad skits. Like, I watch those, and it's just like, you know, I get it a little bit, but it's like, you know, it's almost like I'm watching from a distance. I'm not actually there. Anyways, enough rambling. Let's wrap these pull-ups up. We'll head on over. What's going on here? Gotta get this weight belt over my gigantic ass. Oh, we're not getting that. It's brutal. I kind of petered out on one of those. That's okay. All right. We're gonna be moving onward to some chest supported rows. All right. Buy some seated rows. You already know the drill. last week, or last back day, we got 275 for 4. Made a pretty big jump. I think it was 275 for 4. But feline good. We just got 55 for 5 on pull-ups. So we'll see what we can muster out over here. Also, really? I mean, come on. Let's stuff for the law. Leaving the plates on. That's the Fantasy Fitness Classic, dude. Do better. Feeling good on some rows. Also, where the hell are the 45s? Are we for real right now? You know, life just seems to be so much better, you know, as it gets closer to summer, right? The pumps are better, the music's better, just like feels so good. Like I'm driving here, you know, bumping to some rock music, and it's just like, man, this is, just eats up. Whew. All right, let's see how 2 plates moves, and I reckon I just throw on a 25 and call it a day. Back's already warmed up. Don't gotta spend too much time on it. So enough chit chat. Let's you know, let's do it. Feels a little uncomfortable with no straps because, you know, I'm already in a position that kind of wants it to rack, so it feels a little bit weird. But, you know, that reminds me of another thing. I'm talking to these, you know, my professor and, you know, my classmate, and they're just dogging, like, oh, I think straps are useless, like if you can't do it, you know, with your forearms, and I don't think you should be doing it, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, is that not just a bit of an incoherent logic, right? Your back is just so much stronger and bigger than your forearms, right? Now, personally, like I see the logic. It's like, oh, well, you know, I've never really needed to use, both of them have super big, you know, arms and forearms. So I get what they're saying, and like, you know, with like, oh, well, I've never had to use straps, right? But, you know, you're not everybody. Some people need to use straps. Like, I would argue that I've got pretty beefy, strong forearms, right? But I still use straps on some of my exercises, right? Like this one and, you know, single arm pull downs. So I don't think you should discount them. I think you need to, you know, steward your use of them wisely, right? He was like, oh, well, you know, you can do a 500-600 pound deadlift, no straps, if you just mix up your grip. Well, first off, you're gonna tear your bicep. And second off, imagine how much more weight you could do with straps. Anyways, let's get this. This is a bit, you know, I'm a little intimidated by this weight, but you know, if the weight doesn't scare you a little bit, that's all I'm gonna say. had a hard time racking the weight there. Jeez. It's alright though. I think that was 5. Let's see. I think that was a bit of a messy 5. I'll count it though. You know, not every rep's gonna look perfect, and that's okay. You know? Oh, whoops. I think it also might be time that this this bed comforter might need to come off. I freaking love Gasp shirts. I mean, look at this. Just fits perfectly. You know, sleeves are nice and baggy. Absolutely tough. Back design. The pants fit good too. You know, it's just a D1 brand, to be honest. I think it's the most slept on. You know, I don't hear anybody talk about the Gasp. It's always, you know, Young Ellie this, Echo Vision that, which there's no problem with those companies. I have a couple Echo Vision clothing, right? But I mean, I think Gasp is, like, I definitely have the most constant, like, out of all my gym clothing, it is predominantly Gasp. And maybe that's just my style. I just like things a bit baggier. I don't like tight clothes. It's either a baggy shirt or a tank, right? You know, nothing in between. So maybe that's just how I ball. Who knows? But let's take this bad boy off and see what kind of stuff we're working with. I mean, the forearm veins. I mean, let's get a look at that hole. It's pretty freaky. But you know, I think once I start taking the ooh, look at those chest veins. Once I start taking the liberty to diet back down again, we're gonna look, you know, a lot freakier. Look at those lats. It's pretty nice. Love how low this tank goes. Yeah. Not too shabby. It's back what I'm talking about. Like, I wish I just had a bit of bigger biceps, right? I feel like they're just a huge weak point, especially with how big my forearms are, right? I think the forearm to bicep ratio is a bit off. I mean, the thickness is just makes it look off. All right. Enough of that. Let's finish these rows real quick, and we'll head on to some single arm triceps. Feels pretty good. You know, I think it's a little crazy how fat I am, but also my vascularity, like my upper body leanness is, you know, I would say like that's another thing that people kind of overlook when it comes to genetics is, you know, the body fat distribution plays a huge role, right? Like for me, I basically store no fat on, you know, my pecs up, right? Arms, shoulders, even my back and lower back stay pretty lean. My quads stay super lean. But, you know, uniquely so, it's all on my midsection. And it's not just like it's not like a gradient like most people. It's like a even layer across my belly. So it's like I'll have, you know, feathered quads, you know, I'll have a pretty nice, we'll put a picture of my Christmas tree right here, right? That was like a couple weeks ago, right? I'll have a lean, super lean back, but I'll just have, you know, rather lackluster abs, right? Which is okay because, you know, fortunately, I have a great vacuum, so I can kind of hide behind. Also, what's going on here? I mean, this is just unbelievable. But all right, let's move on to some triceps. There we go. We are doing a little bit of those tricep extensions. You know, similar concept that I mentioned in the last video, right? We're gonna have my opposite arm pressing in on my bicep to allow for better stability, therefore greater motor unit recruitment, and hopefully a better stimulus. You know, I just find it so crazy that people just like ignore basic physics. You know, like in the last video that I clip farmed talking about Carter extensions, right? A fine exercise, right? Completely fine exercise. But the point of the video wasn't for me to dog on the exercise and say you should never do it. The point of the video was to educate you and tell you why there's better options out there, right? So again, now I have to reiterate what I said in the last video because some people just, you know, their pea brains just couldn't handle the information that I was giving them. The issue with a Carter extension is you are not supporting the arm by having it up against here. Now, if you're doing a bicep, you would be. But doing a tricep extension here is rather unproductive, right? You could either do something like this. Let's walk over here, right? You could loop your arm in on a cable over here, grab this one, and do it like this, right? You know, this is a bit of a hodgepodge setup, but it just happened to be set up like this. See how the resistance from the tricep pushdown is going in this direction, right? Now, normally, without this cable, you probably have to have it a little bit lower, but without this cable, right, my back and, you know, lats and rear delts have to stabilize my humerus, therefore taking away from my ability to fully recruit as many motor units for my tricep, right? So now I have to stabilize and do a push down, right? But when I have, you know, this, right, this cable stack is now stabilizing it for me, right? My back is completely relaxed right now because I'm being stabilized by this band that is attached to this stack. So therefore, I can get a greater force output, right? And so it's all about, you know, thinking about an exercise. It's all about the physics behind something, right? Because that's all it is. All it is just physics, right? So let's take something like the hamstrings, right? That I think more people could actually work on, right? Now, in a hamstring movement, the weight is going to be acting, on the hamstrings. So let's take something like an RDL, right? An RDL is going to pull me, forward and down, right? Going like this, right? And so that concentric portion of the RDL is me pushing in, right? And so for me to push in all the way, my quads have to stabilize that front portion, right? So I'm pushing into something. So my quads take up a bit of the stabilization of my femur, right? Now, an intelligent way of trying to maximize your hamstring stability would be, getting some, now I'm not saying you have to do it like this, but getting a pair of dumbbells and going over to a bar, a Smith machine, something that can act as your quads, right? So something like this, something to push into, right, that isn't just your quads. So a more optimal option would be something like this, where you can, bend over, right, and you actually get a better stretch on the hamstrings because you get to go forward more, right? So you can go over, and then on this concentric portion, you get to push into this as opposed to relying on your quads and your core, well, primarily your quads, right? So you get to push into this. It kind of acts as your quads in a sense. So, again, I'm not saying you have to do it like that, but, that is just something to take into consideration. Anyways, enough science yap. Let's move on to this. I'm gonna grab a drink of water. You can cut it if you want. We are back. We're gonna shoot for 5 or 6 here. All right, that was 5. I think I got 4 last time, so far we're looking at improvements across the board right now, which is pretty nice. Effective training just goes such a long way. Let's log this real quick. All right, and after this set, we're going to move on to some quick little rear delt flies and then a set of pull downs, and I think that'll be wraps for this back day. So, all right, let's get to this other arm and try and wrap this up. There we go. Did I do it? Let me see. All right. I think I'm actually going to leave the stack at 100. My working set. I'm going to do a quick little warm up here, and last week we got this. Now we got 90 for 7. If you want, you can cut this. Yeah. I want to make the video a little shorter, so.
You're not like talking about something or not working out.
So just cut it. Yeah, exactly. If there's not like a bit or a working set. But I think having somebody else to talk to would be like an exciting, just like having something to go back and forth. All right, we're probably back. Oh. All right, let's get this rear delt set in and that was heavy. 100 for 4. You know, I think back might be the best. You know, I think back day might be the best, you know, training day, right? Like, you know, you can have a chest day, you can hit a parlay, you can get no play. Back day in 5, right? It's just so elite, dude. A back pump, you get your lats popping, right? Especially on a back tricep day specifically, right? You get the back pump, right? Then you get a bit of a shoulder pump from the rear delts, right? You obviously get a bit of a bicep pump from all the pulling, and then you throw in a little bit of that tricep. So you get a really nice culmination. I think it's probably the best looking one, right? Chest day's nice because you know, get a nice chest, but in your poses, it can kind of look a little bit lackluster, right? I feel like I don't get as prominent of a tricep stimulus on a chest day than as I do bicep stimulus on a back day. So, which is probably true because most pressing movements are almost exclusively your lateral and medial head, not your long head. Whereas in a row or pull down, you get all of your biceps and brachialis. So, jeez, that is heavy. Regardless, though, we ball. Let's wrap this hoe up, and we'll be on our merry way, ending it on the same exercise we started, kind of. Ooh. All right. I think we're gonna go up today. Last back day we got 105, 4.7. So, you know, it's basically the upper end of my preferred rep range. So we're gonna go up to 120. 15-pound jump is heavy though. We will see how this moves. All right. Come on. You already know the drill? Quick little 4. That's actually exactly what I was hoping for. We take those. Let's wrap this up. That vacuum is, oh, gone. The vacuum is gone. Let's go. All right, on to posing. All right, let's hit some back poses. Let me scoot over real quick. Let's, that's our back day. I'll see you guys next time.